I always thought my marriage to Sarah was solid. We had been together for nearly 8 years, and I felt like we were a team. Friends would often remark on how well we balanced each other out, Sarah, with her spontaneous energy, and me, the more grounded one. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I never imagined we would end up where we are now. Things started to shift a few months ago. I noticed little changes. Sarah was frequently on her phone, often smiling and texting late into the night when she thought I was asleep. I brushed it off at first. She was just busy with work, I told myself. But deep down, I felt a nagging unease, a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Then there were the nights she started coming home late from her yoga classes. I remember the first time she came home past midnight. I was half asleep on the couch, watching a mindless show. When she walked in, her hair was disheveled, and she had that same giddy smile on her face. "Sorry, babe, got caught up with some friends," she exclaimed, but her eyes darted away from mine, and I could shake the feeling that there was more to her story. The day everything changed forever was a regular Tuesday. I had taken a couple of days off work to handle some bills and get our finances back on track. Our money situation had been tight, but I thought we could manage. While I was cleaning out her side of the closet, I stumbled upon a small box tucked away behind her shoes. Inside were photos that sent my world crashing down. There were pictures of Sarah, smiling and cozying up to a man I didn't recognize. My heart sank as I flicked through the snapshots. Each one was a dagger to my gut. I remember holding those photos, feeling as if my heart had been ripped from my chest. The realization that she had been unfaithful hit me like a freight train. I needed to confront her. I had to know the truth. When Sarah returned home that evening, I was ready. I had those photos in my hand, and my heart raced as she walked through the door. I took a deep breath and said, "We need to talk." Her reaction was immediate. Her smile faded, and she became defensive. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brows furrowing in confusion. I held up the photos. "What the hell is this, Sarah?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. The look on her face was a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Oh, come on, it's just a joke. We were just messing around," she retorted, trying to wave it off as if it were nothing. "A joke? You think this is funny?" My voice boomed, and I felt the anger boiling within me. She quickly shifted tactics, her tone turning whiny. "You're overreacting. It was just a one-time thing. I was lonely, okay? You've been so busy with work, I didn't think it would affect you." As she spoke, I felt a rush of emotions, betrayal, rage, and confusion all swirled together. How could she downplay this? How could she justify her lies so easily? It was infuriating. I demanded explanations, but all I got were half-hearted excuses. The more she spoke, the more I realized she had no remorse, only a desire to minimize what she had done. I couldn't listen any longer. I stormed out of the house, my mind racing. I felt lost, like the ground beneath me was crumbling. How could she do this to me? How could our love turn into such a betrayal? That night I lay awake, replaying everything in my mind. I was overwhelmed by the realization that the woman I loved had not only betrayed me but had also stripped away my trust. It was a long, dark night filled with tears and anger. I had to figure out my next move, but my heart was so heavy that I could barely think straight. The morning light creeping through the blinds did little to ease the turmoil in my heart. I felt like a ghost in my own home, the air thick with the scent of betrayal. As I sat in the kitchen nursing a cup of coffee, every creak of the floorboards reminded me of Sarah's presence, and I half expected her to walk in with that same nonchalant attitude she had the night before. But she didn't. She had stayed at her friend's place, or at least that was the story she told me. I couldn't bring myself to reach for my phone and text her. I was still processing everything, my anger, sadness, disbelief. I felt like I was standing on a precipice, peering down into an abyss, and I had no idea how to pull myself back. Days passed, and the silence between us grew louder. Sarah returned home the next day, and we fell into a pattern of avoidance. We were both in the same house but living like strangers. I would find ways to stay busy, cleaning, running errands, anything to avoid having to face the truth of our shattered relationship. But the truth had a way of crashing in, and when I finally did see her, it was like a dam had broken. "Can we talk?" I finally asked, my voice rough and hesitant. Sarah looked at me, her expression a mix of irritation and regret. What more is there to say? She snapped, crossing her arms defensively. I took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. I need to understand why you did this, Sarah. I thought we had a good thing going. Was I really that blind? She shifted uncomfortably, her gaze falling to the floor. You just don't get it. I felt so alone. You were always working late and I needed someone to be there for me. As she spoke, I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. It was infuriating to hear her make excuses. So you decided to cheat. That's your solution. You just threw away everything we built for a fling. Her eyes flared with anger. It wasn't just a fling, it meant something to me, okay? I didn't plan for it to happen, it just did. I couldn't hold back my anger anymore. You had a choice, Sarah. You could have talked to me. You could have reached out. But instead, you chose to betray me. Her defensive walls crumbled for a moment and I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. I know I messed up. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. But the sincerity was hard to believe amidst the excuses and defiance. I felt my heart sink. I wanted to believe her, to wrap my arms around her and make everything right, but the sting of her betrayal was too fresh. Apologies won't fix this. You've shattered my trust. How can I ever look at you the same way again? The conversation spiraled into a heated argument filled with accusations and tears. I felt as if I were caught in a tempest, emotions swirling around us like a storm. We both said things we would later regret, things that cut deep. But the truth was, I was losing the woman I loved and it was tearing me apart. That evening, as I lay in bed, I felt hollow. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the chaos in my mind, but all I could see was Sarah with him, with that man who had taken away everything I held dear. The image haunted me, refusing to dissipate. In the days that followed, I became consumed by a single thought. How could I turn this situation around? I was drowning in despair, but I realized I didn't want to spiral down any further. I needed to take control of my life. I had to make a decision, not just for me, but for my future. I started thinking about my finances, a topic that had weighed heavily on me for months. Our debts had been piling up, credit cards, loans. I knew I had to face them head on, regardless of Sarah's actions. It was time to turn my pain into discipline, to use this moment as a stepping stone towards something greater. I made a plan. I would tackle our debts aggressively, breaking them down one payment at a time. Every payment would symbolize a step forward, a move away from the heartache. It wouldn't be easy, but I needed a goal, something to focus on that would allow me to reclaim my life. As I dove into the numbers, I felt a flicker of determination ignite within me. I might have lost the woman I loved, but I wouldn't lose myself too. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to turn my pain into power. If Sarah thought she could break me, she had another thing coming. I was going to stand tall, even if it meant doing it alone. With my newfound determination, I threw myself into a routine. Every morning, I would wake up early, go for a run, and then sit down at the kitchen table with my laptop, diving into our finances. I tracked every cent, each credit card statement, each bill that seemed to multiply like rabbits. I created a budget, a strict one, and I committed to it with a ferocity I hadn't felt in years. This was my battle now, and I was ready to fight. I also started researching side hustles. I had always been hesitant to take on extra work, believing that my 9 to 5 was enough. But now, with every payment I made, I felt a tiny weight lift off my shoulders. I signed up for freelance gigs, offered to do odd jobs around the neighborhood, anything to bring in additional income. I even pulled out my guitar, a relic from my college days, and started playing at local cafes on weekends. It felt good to be productive, to channel my pain into something creative. In the midst of all this, Sarah remained an ever-present shadow. She would come home and try to engage me in conversation, asking about my day, about my plans, but I was distant. I couldn't help it. I was angry, hurt, and every time she smiled at me, I was reminded of how easily she had betrayed the trust we built together. One night I was sitting at the table, meticulously going over numbers when she approached me. "You've been really focused lately," she said, her voice soft. "I'm proud of you." I looked up, barely able to muster a response. "Thanks," I said curtly, returning my gaze to the screen. "Are you really going to keep avoiding me?" She pressed, a note of desperation creeping into her tone. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to lash out. "I'm not avoiding you, Sarah. I'm just busy. I have a lot on my plate." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see the frustration building within her. "You know, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I'm sorry." "I miss us." I let out a humorless laugh. "You miss us? What about everything that's happened? How can you miss what we had when you threw it away so easily?" She opened her mouth to argue, but then closed it, and her shoulders fell. "I just wish we could work on things together," she finally admitted. I felt a pang of sadness as I watched her, realizing just how much I missed the connection we once had. But that feeling was quickly overshadowed by the realization that trust wasn't something you could rebuild overnight. "I can't just forget what you did, Sarah. Maybe we need space." Her expression fell, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. "Space? Do you really think that's what we need?" "It's what I need," I replied firmly, my heart aching. Days turned into weeks, and the home we shared became a battlefield of silence and tension. I kept my focus on my financial plan, chipping away at our debts, and every payment felt like a small victory. It was empowering, like I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. But the emotional toll of the situation was still heavy. One evening, while sorting through some paperwork, I found the photos again, the ones that had shattered my world. I stared at them for a moment, feeling the anger surge through me again. I knew I needed to confront Sarah one last time about them. When she walked in that night, I was ready. "We need to talk about these," I said, holding the photos up as if they were evidence in a courtroom. She hesitated, her expression shifting between guilt and defiance. "I told you that was a mistake. I was confused and lost." "A mistake? You think this is just a mistake?" I spat, my frustration boiling over. "You had a choice, Sarah. You could have come to me, talked to me, but instead you went to someone else." "I'm not the only one at fault here," she shot back, her voice rising. "You were never around. You were always too busy with work." I felt my temper flare. "So that makes it okay for you to cheat? You could have talked to me. You could have tried to fix things. But instead you chose to betray me." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I saw the pain reflected in her gaze. "I know I messed up, but can't we at least try to move forward?" I shook my head, feeling drained. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah. It's going to take time, and right now I don't think we can be together." She broke down, sobbing as I held the photos out in front of her. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to come to this. I love you." But her words felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was more remorseful for getting caught than for her actions. "I need to focus on my own healing. I can't do this right now." As I watched her crumble, something shifted inside me. I felt the weight of her betrayal, but I also felt the strength of my resolve. I was moving forward, whether she was by my side or not. I was no longer the man who would let someone else dictate my happiness. I had a new mission: to focus on my life, my goals, and my independence. Turning those debts into discipline had become my anchor, and every payment made was a step away from the pain of betrayal. I was ready for whatever came next, and I was determined to rebuild my life, one step at a time. With the decision made to focus on my own journey, I threw myself even deeper into my financial recovery. The relentless grind of paying off debts consumed my thoughts and actions. I developed a new routine that filled my days with purpose. Each morning, I would wake up early, go for a run, and then sit down at the kitchen table with my laptop. I meticulously tracked my expenses and payments, feeling each transaction lift a weight off my shoulders. It was during this time that I discovered the power of discipline. I began to see my debt as a series of challenges rather than insurmountable obstacles. I broke everything down into bite-sized goals: pay off this credit card by the end of the month, or save X amount for the car payment. Each time I achieved one of these milestones, I felt a rush of pride that countered the pain Sarah had caused. I also threw myself into my side hustles, which had taken off more than I could have hoped for. Freelancing gave me the chance to explore my skills and interests, and I found a renewed sense of confidence in my abilities. I was able to book gigs that not only paid but also reignited my passion for music. Playing at local cafes became a highlight of my week, providing an outlet for my emotions. Yet, despite the progress I was making, I couldn't escape the emotional fallout from my marriage. There were moments when I'd be playing a song on stage, lost in the music, and suddenly feel a wave of sorrow wash over me. I'd remember how Sarah used to cheer me on from the crowd, her infectious smile lighting up the room. But those memories were bittersweet now, and I had to remind myself that I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. As the weeks turned into months, I began to find a rhythm in my new life. My debts were slowly but surely diminishing, and I felt the burden lifting. I also started to reconnect with friends, many of whom I had neglected during my marriage. It felt good to laugh and share stories, to feel the warmth of camaraderie. They supported me through this transition, reminding me that I was not alone. But just when I thought I had started to move on, Sarah decided to reach out again. One evening, as I was winding down after a long day of work, she texted me, "Can we talk? I miss you." I stared at the message, a swirl of emotions flooding in. Part of me wanted to respond, to jump back into the familiarity of our relationship. But I quickly reminded myself of the pain I had endured, the betrayal that had shattered everything. With a deep breath, I pushed the urge aside and focused on my own path. I replied, "I need more time, Sarah." The days turned into weeks again. I continued living my life, forging ahead with my plans and dreams. I found myself diving deeper into my music, writing lyrics that expressed my journey through heartbreak and recovery. I even began to think about a future that didn't involve Sarah, one where I could build something new and exciting for myself. Then one fateful Saturday afternoon, as I was cleaning up my guitar after a session, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Hey, is this Jack?" a voice on the other end asked. "Yeah, who's this?" "It's Mark. I'm a friend of Sarah's. She's been really struggling lately and I wanted to reach out to you." My heart sank. Hearing her name spoken by someone else felt like a punch in the gut. "What do you mean she's struggling?" "She confided in me about the breakup. She's been really lost without you, Jack." I think she's genuinely trying to work through her mistakes. I felt a mix of anger and confusion. "And what do you want me to do about it? I can't just fix everything for her." "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just thought you should know that she's still trying to reach out to you, and maybe there's a chance for you both to talk things through." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt sorry for her, recognizing that she was hurting, but another part of me couldn't shake the memory of the betrayal. "Look, I appreciate you telling me, but I need to focus on myself right now. I'm not ready to talk." After hanging up, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. I knew Sarah was in pain, but I also knew that I couldn't sacrifice my healing to comfort her. I had worked too hard to regain my stability, and I was not about to let her pull me back into a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. In the following days, I faced a series of emotional challenges. I found myself reflecting deeply on our marriage and the love we once had. Was it worth salvaging? Could I truly forgive her? Those questions lingered in my mind, and despite my resolve, I felt an undeniable pull. As I wrestled with these thoughts, I tried to remain grounded. I continued my routine, focusing on my side gigs and maintaining my budget. Each payment I made felt like a step closer to freedom, and I reminded myself that I was on a path toward rebuilding my life. But the stakes were rising. I knew I had to make a decision soon, either to move forward without her or to consider the possibility of reconciliation. I was on the edge, and I had to choose whether I would let her back into my life or keep the door firmly closed. As days turned into weeks, the weight of my indecision grew heavier. I was stuck in a limbo of my own making, grappling with the duality of my feelings for Sarah. Part of me longed for the connection we once shared, while the other part screamed at me to protect myself from further heartbreak. I had finally found a semblance of peace in my life, and I wasn't sure if inviting her back in would jeopardize that. One evening, after a particularly rewarding day filled with freelance work and a successful gig at a local bar, I returned home feeling invigorated. I had just finished tallying the week's income and was about to dive into my personal reflections when my phone buzzed with another message from Sarah. "Can we meet? Just to talk. I need to see you." I stared at the screen for a long moment, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to throw caution to the wind and say yes to face her and hear her out. But the memories of betrayal clung to me like a shadow, reminding me of what had happened. I took a deep breath and replied, "I need some time, I'm not ready yet." Her response came almost immediately. "I understand. I just want you to know I'm really sorry for everything. I'll give you space, but I hope we can talk soon." Her words echoed in my mind, lingering long after I put my phone down. I couldn't deny that I was still drawn to her. The love I felt didn't simply vanish overnight. Yet the thought of re-engaging with her filled me with anxiety. The next few days were filled with a mix of determination and reflection. I continued to pay down debts and embrace my newfound sense of purpose. My side hustles were thriving, and I was starting to regain my sense of identity. I had become an independent version of myself, and I liked it. But there were moments when I would catch myself daydreaming about what life could be like if I chose to forgive Sarah. I imagined a future where we could work through our issues, but the optimism was always tinged with doubt. Could I truly trust her again? Then, one afternoon after a particularly fulfilling day of work, I decided to take a long walk to clear my head. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, and I found myself aimlessly wandering the familiar streets we once strolled together. It was during this walk that I stumbled upon a small park, the same one where we had shared many happy moments. Sitting on a bench, I allowed the memories to wash over me. The laughter, the playful banter, the quiet moments that had made up the fabric of our relationship. For the first time, I felt a deep sense of sadness, not just for what we had lost, but for the love that had once flourished between us. In that moment of vulnerability, I realized that I hadn't just lost my wife, I had lost a part of myself too. I had invested so much into our marriage, and while I was reclaiming my independence, there was still an echo of that love lingering within me. After a long contemplation, something shifted. I recognized that while I needed to protect myself, I also owed it to myself to explore the potential of reconciliation, not just for Sarah's sake, but for my own heart. Perhaps there was a way to rebuild trust, to communicate openly and honestly about our feelings. That evening, I made the decision to reach out to Sarah. I sent her a message, finally allowing myself the willingness to talk. "Let's meet. I'm ready to talk." Her response was immediate and filled with relief. "Thank you, I'll be there." We agreed to meet at a cafe we used to frequent, a place filled with memories of laughter and long conversations. As the time approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Would this conversation lead to healing, or would it open old wounds I wasn't ready to face? When I arrived at the cafe, I took a seat at a corner table, trying to calm my racing heart. I scanned the room, watching couples chatting over coffee, friends sharing stories, and for a moment I felt isolated in my own emotional turmoil. Then I saw her walk through the door. Sarah looked different somehow, vulnerable but determined. She approached me with a tentative smile, and as she sat down, I noticed the change in her posture. There was a weight on her shoulders, a heaviness that hadn't been there before. "Hey," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. "Hey," I replied, feeling an intense wave of emotions wash over me. We sat there for a moment, the ambient noise of the cafe buzzing around us, but for us, time seemed to stand still. I knew this conversation would be pivotal in defining where we stood. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know I hurt you, and I hate that I did. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how selfish I was." I looked at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "It's not just about the apology. You broke my trust, and that's not something that can just be fixed with words." "I know that," she replied, her expression earnest. "What I did was inexcusable. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm committed to working on myself. I want to understand why I did it and how I can be better, both for myself and for us." As she spoke, I felt a flicker of hope. The Sarah sitting across from me seemed to have changed, and I wanted to believe that she genuinely wanted to make amends. But the scars of betrayal were still fresh, and I knew we had a long way to go. "I appreciate you saying that," I finally replied, my voice steady. "But I need time to process everything." I've been through a lot and I'm not sure what the future holds for us." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I understand. I'll give you that time, but I hope we can work through this together. I miss you, Jack." "I miss you too, but we have to be realistic," I cautioned. "Trust doesn't come back overnight." "I know. I'm willing to do the work, I promise," she said, reaching across the table, her hand hovering just above mine. As I looked into her eyes, I felt a mix of emotions: fear, hope, anger. This was the beginning of a new chapter, and while I was hesitant, I also felt the pull of the love that existed between us. I had fought hard to reclaim my independence, but could I truly open my heart again? The conversation continued, filled with honesty and vulnerability. We discussed our feelings, the miscommunication, and the loneliness that had driven her to make such a destructive choice. While I wasn't ready to embrace her back into my life completely, I realized that this meeting was the first step toward healing, whether that meant restoring our marriage or finding closure. After hours of conversation, we left the cafe with a sense of understanding. It was just the beginning, and I knew the road ahead would be challenging. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us to find our way back to each other, rebuilding trust and love, one day at a time. As I walked away from the cafe that evening, I felt an unfamiliar mixture of hope and caution blooming within me. The conversation had been difficult, but it marked a turning point in my journey. I knew that rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and genuine effort from both of us. But for the first time in months, I felt like we were on the right path. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I began to establish new patterns in our relationship. We started seeing each other regularly, sitting down for honest conversations where we both laid our feelings bare. I learned about her loneliness and struggles, and she began to grasp just how deeply her actions had affected me. Each meeting felt like a small step forward, a tentative dance toward reconciliation. We also sought professional help. I suggested couples therapy, and to my surprise, Sarah agreed without hesitation. We both recognized that we needed guidance in navigating the murky waters of our relationship. In therapy, we explored our communication styles, our individual needs, and the vulnerabilities that had led us to this point. It was uncomfortable but necessary. The sessions were eye-opening. I learned how to articulate my feelings without letting anger overshadow my words, and Sarah learned to express her insecurities rather than resorting to betrayal. We began to understand each other on a deeper level, peeling back the layers of hurt and disappointment that had built up over time. Despite the progress, there were still hard days. I'd wake up some mornings with a pit in my stomach, the memories of her betrayal lurking in the back of my mind. On those days, I would remind myself of the progress we were making and the commitment we had both made to heal and grow. I started journaling to track my feelings, allowing myself to process the confusion and hurt that sometimes resurfaced. One pivotal moment came when we had been seeing each other consistently for nearly 2 months. We were sitting in my living room, the afternoon sun casting a warm glow over us. As we talked about our dreams for the future, I could see the spark of the woman I had fallen in love with beginning to shine through the cracks. "Do you think we can really make this work?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with both hope and fear. I looked at her, weighing my response. "I want to believe we can, but it's going to take time. I need to trust you again, and that trust needs to be earned." She nodded, understanding the weight of my words. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I miss the life we had together. I miss you." As we sat together, I found myself falling into a rhythm. I was learning to trust again, little by little. Each time she followed through on a promise, each small act of kindness helped mend the broken pieces of my heart. We were creating new memories while cautiously addressing the old ones that lingered in our minds. Months passed, and the healing journey was ongoing. My debts continued to dwindle, a constant reminder of the discipline I had cultivated. Each month that passed felt like a victory, not just in finances but in my personal growth as well. I had learned to reclaim my life and my identity, independent of Sarah. Whatever our future held, the turning point came one evening during a casual dinner date. We were laughing, sharing stories, and reminiscing about our first dates, the butterflies, the excitement. In that moment, I realized how much I had missed her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she was genuinely happy. It felt like a tender reminder of the love we once shared, a love that was worth fighting for. "Jack," she said, her voice gentle but firm, pulling me from my thoughts. "I know we've had our challenges, but I really believe we can build something better together. I want to be the partner you deserve." I looked at her, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "I appreciate that, Sarah, and I want to believe in us too. But it's going to take both of us working hard at this." And so we did. We continued to communicate openly, and with each conversation, we wove a new fabric of understanding and trust. I found myself laughing more often, allowing joy to seep back into my life. Eventually, we made the decision to take a leap of faith and move in together again, this time with a renewed sense of commitment and understanding. It wasn't without its hurdles. We still had moments where doubt crept in, but we faced those moments together, often discussing them in therapy or over coffee, never shying away from the hard conversations. As I stood on the balcony of our new apartment one evening, looking out at the city skyline, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It had taken a long time to get to this point, months filled with pain, reflection, and hard work, but I realized that I was no longer living in the shadow of betrayal. I was standing tall, a reflection of resilience and growth. I had turned the pain of my past into lessons of strength and discipline. I had discovered what it meant to be vulnerable, to forgive, and to rebuild. I was no longer just Jack, the husband who had been hurt. I was Jack, a man who chose to reclaim his life, regardless of the storms that had come his way. Life was unpredictable, but I felt ready to face whatever came next, together with Sarah or alone. In the end, that was the greatest lesson of all, that I could choose my path and I could find a way to rise above any challenge.